Hey everyone. So what I want to talk about in this video is I want to talk about getting your will back. Other words, kind of reconnecting to chakra number 3 here. Now this is a pretty important topic. It was been extremely important topic for me in particular. And the reason is I've done a lot of practices throughout my life. A lot of sexual energy practices. I've studied Tantra and Kundalini Yoga and Taoism and all these different things. So I've gathered a lot of information and done a lot of practices. But something that's kind of eluded me for a very, very long time was I've always kind of felt a little bit disconnected from my belly, from my place of will, right? My solar plexus, my lower dantian, my hara, whatever you want to call it. Now, it was inexplicable to me, why this was. But before I get into it, let me go ahead and draw your attention to down below the video. One is please like and subscribe, obviously. But down below the video also you're going to find 2 different programs. One is free, which is the formula. That's for those interested in sacred sexual practices. You'll get a PDF and you can gather some more information, which will hopefully be helpful for you. Then also down below the video is my Sovereign Tantric Sexual Energy Coaching Program. This is pretty much the final month I'll be offering this before I go ahead and switch it up into a new program. But this is a very extensive program. It's about 30 to 33 different videos. So if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that, the next version I'm going to be putting out is going to be quite a bit scaled down. Another way to look at it is maybe a little bit more streamlined. So back to the video. Myself, I've always felt kind of, like I said, disconnected from my gut. I've never really had a clear gut instinct. And what I've kind of learned over time, through studying certain systems like human design, if any of you guys are interested in human design, which is an astrology-derived system. It's basically the I Ching mixed with the tropical astrology or the tropical zodiac. And also, I believe there's one that, the Kabbalah, right? So it's the Kabbalistic tree of life. And they all mashed it together and you come out with this really, really interesting system. Again, check out human design. Check out the aura types, and you're going to see that not every human being has a gut instinct. Okay, so myself, I've always been a little bit disconnected from my place of will. In essence, how did I get like this? And hopefully you're going to be able to reflect on what I'm saying here. So I went to school because I was supposed to. This includes, starting from the age of 5, I often tell my mother and other people, worst day of my life was the first day of school because I felt very clearly a loss of my autonomy. How much autonomy does a 5-year-old have? Well, I felt like I had quite a bit and it was gone. Whatever little bit I had as a 5-year-old, when I went off to kindergarten, it was over. So it was a rough day for me. But from that point on, I disliked school the whole way. I went all the way through until I got my master's degree though. Because I felt very motivated to, in essence, impress others, right? In essence, to fit into our culture. Not saying any of these things are a problem. I'm just saying, for me, it felt in some ways incompatible. So all that aside, these things started to make me feel tight and, again, disconnected from my belly. So now going back into, well, what is the belly? What is the energy down here? The energy down here is very connected to here, all right? So what do I mean by that? So the energy of your belly, your gut, your solar plexus, this is where the energy for life is, okay? Let me repeat that. The energy for life is in your gut, all right? Of course, it's distributed throughout the body, but this is the powerhouse. This is where digestion and assimilation happens. This is where, everything is really transformed inside the body. It's put into the furnace, so to speak. And so anyway, the idea is that we want to be able to access this energy most directly. We want to be able to say, hey, I'm in alignment. And this is the word I'm going to get back to in a moment. Authentic alignment specifically. Now the throat. What is the throat? The throat is communication, but loosely it's actually in a lot of ways connected to this idea of manifestation, right? So I think about here to the throat, to the belly, like again, this is a bit like these are the areas, the centers we all kind of combine. You could say the heart as well. All these centers work in harmony to guide us along the correct trajectory in life. But the place where the power is, again, is the belly. Now, Yogi Bhajan, who was the sort of guru who I read a lot about, and and I studied his system, Kundalini Yoga, etc. He used to say we need to speak from our belly, from our gut. I had no idea what that meant. What I actually learned that it meant is that if you have no lies, you have no distortions, you can simply flow, right? You can simply flow. The energy can simply flow out and you can express in a very authentic way. And the reality is this is very, very true. The more I've meditated, the more yoga I've done, the more sexual transmutation practices, and the more I've been an honest human being, the more that I've noticed that I can communicate in a more fluid way. Does it mean I'm always eloquent when I speak? Definitely not. I say dumb shit all the time. So the reality is that for me, though, it's been this idea of I no longer have to think about what I'm saying, right? So if you've got lies or contradictions, or you don't have the words, in the sense of you have to think about what you're going to say, it's different if someone's asking you a question, okay? But when you're simply communicating, what ends up happening is if you have contradictions or lies, one, you're going to express it in terms of your body language, potentially, but also you may express it in the tone of your voice may change. You may get a crack in your voice or something else that might give you away that you're not being totally honest. So keep in mind that's one of the benefits of honesty is that you can then communicate freely. So again, that's the sort of energy as it rises up, right? So this energy wants to pressurize outward. And if you've got your sexual energy intact, meaning you're not discharging it and wasting it all the time, because the solar plexus also applies to what's happening down below it. If you're discharging your sexual energy all the time, a certain amount of this energy is not elevating up to the belly, up to the gut. So in other words, you may have a deficit in life force energy in some ways. I mean, if you're ejaculating on an everyday basis or every other day or even a few times a week, you may notice a deficit there. And this deficit could lead all the way up to the higher centers where you may actually start to experience like brain fog. I know personally when I quit ejaculating all the time, my brain fog went away completely. Is because my body was then functioning more efficiently and more energetically, right? So now here's the ultimate solution. We all have responsibilities in life. We all have things we do not want to do, okay? We all have things that sometimes we have to push ourselves into. So it's a bit like, I think it's a bit difficult to say to someone, oh, just tap into flow and go with life, right? Yeah, this is wise wisdom, right? For wisdom for those who perhaps need to kind of like let go and have a little bit of faith that they're be guiding through life. But the reality is that there's constantly points where we have to make decisions. We have to make decisions and choices relative to how life is actually flowing towards us, right? So it's about reducing the resistance to the flow. But if we have all these decisions we made in our past, which were incongruent, right? Again, for me, my 20s, I'll relate to you another story. In my 20s, it was, there was a problem around, again, like let's say clothing. I was buying clothing, thinking credit cards were money, and they're not. But again, I didn't really think about the ramifications of what I was doing. I was trying to keep up with other people. So I was shopping at stores I had no business shopping at. I was buying clothes I had no business buying. I created a great deal of debt. And that debt was eventually, I had to pay it down. It caused me a lot of stress, et cetera, et cetera. But this was because I was simply making decisions from a place that was inauthentic. Again, the human design system, they say you're making decisions from not self. Okay, so not self. All right. So where is self? If I'm making decisions and buying stuff in order to try to like compete with others, because I was playing the mating game at that point. So what is self then? Well, self says I need to make decisions with my intuition. And let me go into that in a moment, but this is, for me, when I hit the end of my 20s and into my early 30s, before I blew up my life, so that I could then pare away everything and just reduce, so that I could then sort of reclaim or go on that path to reclaiming what was authentic. But as I kind of did that, what I started to realize was that my greatest suffering was the fact that I felt cut off from my intuition. So intuition is connected to the body. The body is where the energy for life, like I mentioned before, the energy for life is. So why would I make decisions with my mind, with my intellect? The intellect is here to show us options, this or that. If you're a Gemini, you know this really quite well. Geminis are excellent at this oscillation back and forth. They can think about this, they can think about that. I love having discussions with Geminis for that reason. But it's not great for decision making, right? You can make rational decisions based on logical sort of, I guess, man's creation, we'll say. Let's say law. Yeah, you can apply all sorts of logic and reason to law because man made up law, right? So, but generally speaking, again, this is like law as it pertains to something that's, once again, outside of yourself. But the real way to reclaim your energy, your life force energy, is to, at least those things that you are bringing into you, you have a responsibility to make a choice that has to do with, sexual partners, pornography, food, supplements, information, books you read, this and that. Again, these are all things, in essence, you are consuming. And the idea here is that you're consuming, you're assimilating it, and is becoming who you are, right? So it all gets processed here to get expressed here. So in other words, garbage in, garbage out. Now you bring in good, and you're going to get out. You're going to give out good, correct? So now the key to this, like I said, is intuition. I'm going to once again talk about myself. So each one of us, and maybe this is associated with astrology, signs, etc. So I'll give you a quick example. I'm a water sign. I have a lot of water in my chart. So for me, everything is kind of processed through feeling. I'll give you another example. If you're an air sign, the intuition that you may access is going to come across in perhaps an intellectual way. So meaning it's going to come across as perhaps like thoughts or words, right? You just have to be able to differentiate those words as being, okay, that's clearly coming from ego versus that's coming from somewhere else that's a bit deeper, my subconscious, or you could just say spirit, okay? We'll generally say spirit. Because spirit, life force energy, spirit, prana, wherever, chi, whatever we want to call it, it's rising out of the greater well of creation. Okay, so it's rising out of the greater well of creation. All this is funneling through us. All we have to do is to make choices on how to direct that energy. But how we direct that energy has to, in my view, come through your intuition. If you operate through your intuition, it's going to reconnect you to your belly, to your core, your place of strength. If you have a gut instinct, your gut instinct is going to say yes or no to certain things, and you have to pay attention. Why do you have to pay attention? Because gut instinct and intuition transcends time and space. It transcends time and space. It allows you to, in essence, see into the future and whether or not something is good for you. And that's really, really important. So going back to my example, again, I'm a water sign. It gets processed through feeling. Let's say I'm bringing in supplements, right? I got a whole cupboard full of supplements. I'm not going to take all these every day. And in fact, I can study all the science and find protocols, but those protocols may not necessarily be right for me, right? So the idea, or right for me at that moment, okay? So the idea of just taking supplements because science says, that's abdicating or giving away my will once again. Is disconnecting me from my core, the place of power. So what I do is I simply touch, each of the supplements. I tune into myself. Of course, I have to make sure I'm centered before I do this. I touch it, and I simply ask universe, that's what my communication with God, whatever is universe. And I say yes or no. And if it's a yes, let's say I'm touching selenium, and if it's a yes, I'll feel my energy lift. If it's a no, I'll feel my energy drop. Okay? And I go on each one of the supplements. So, some nights I take 0 supplements. Some mornings I take 0 supplements because I got no yes. And then other mornings I'm taking 4 or 5 different things. Again, it's variable, and it's not always the same stuff, but I'll go through phases where I'll take the same supplements all the time. So I've learned to do this with food. Prior to the last 2 or 3 months, what I started to feel 2 or 3 months ago, I was feeling this incongruence. I was feeling off. I was feeling out of sync in some particular way, and I wasn't sure why. But what I started to realize during that period was, I've been operating intuitively for a very, very long time, but I've only really been applying it to, say, pulling a tarot card or using my intuition for, say, maybe let's say, bigger decisions in life, or when I'm working on people and doing energy work, right? But I started to realize I need to use my intuition constantly, right? Again, anything that I'm going to bring into my body, into my brain, into my mind, is going to be digested, assimilated, and integrated into who I am. So it's incredibly important that I make choices that are directly connected to my body's energy. Is this going to be detrimental to my energy versus beneficial to my energy? I hope this is clear. Incredibly important. So what I would suggest for all of you, and it took me a lot to get to this point, what I would suggest for all of you is to hone in on how your specific intuition feels. How does it come across to you? How does it communicate with you? Every single human being has intuition, whether it's a gut instinct and a gut feeling, or like for me, it's this sense of energy lifting and dropping, again, intellectual intuition, on and on and on, right? So sometimes people are very tangible with intuition, right? Where they kind of have to it just feels right? So they're arranging the rooms in their house so the energy flows better until it just simply feels right? The more you access that intuition, the more you're going to align your energy with source, universe, God, spirit, whatever it is, and the more that life will start to serve you. But you have to have faith. It's a process. You have to have faith that deep down inside you have to know, am I truly being guided? And sometimes you have to make really intense decisions, in terms of totally rearranging your life so that you can live that life more authentically. So once again, so your energy can then flow more freely. So oftentimes, like I said, if you're feeling incongruent, off balance, you're going through way too many ups and downs, you're mentally, you don't feel fit, it's probably because you're out of alignment. Simple as that. And your key to getting back into alignment is to start making intuitive decisions and choices about everything. Okay? But particularly those things you're bringing into you, right? And it's not just about jobs and, all these other things. Those things you certainly want to be exercising your intuition. But you're spending, 40 hours a week with a job, let's say, that job better feel good to you. So with all that said, I wish you the best on your journey to connecting to your powerhouse. And like I said, you're brilliant. You should know you're brilliant. Claim that brilliance. It's built into you. It's there to guide you. And thank you all.